Washington-Manhasset. As you know, our local league, the New York State League, and the National League are nonpartisan. We do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. Our mission is to engage you, the voters, by giving candidates for a given office a public space to answer your questions in a structured way while maintaining civil discourse. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce league members who are here today. Nancy Kaplan will be our timer. Judy Estequist will be recording the event and getting it posted on our league YouTube channel. I'll be Dorothy Schwetzka will be moderator, and she will be handling the microphone for questions, and we will be all helping to make sure people line up and are in order. Questions will be heard on camera, but no one will see you on this YouTube video. As I said before, it'll be focused on the candidates and the moderator. We in the league describe our most important priority as making democracy work. This includes voter services work, which is part of our work today, in forums like this one, where candidates speak directly to the voters on issues that matter. It includes educating and advocating with legislators on voting reforms such as Equal Rights Amendment, redistricting, the environment, and healthcare. And we only take positions on issues after studying them extensively. We hope you'll consider joining us in our work. Membership forms we have available if any of you would like to join today. And we also have a QR code which you can use on your phone to register online. Remember, the League of Women Voters is not for women only. Dorothy Schwetzka, our moderator today, is not from Roslyn Estates, but from Port Washington, as our rules require. We do require an out-of-area moderator who is not, has no real feelings about the issues involved because they don't concern the particular area that they live in. As the moderator, Dorothy is the arbiter of all decisions going forward. Dorothy, the podium and the floor is yours.
All right.
And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Regina. I appreciate everybody being here today. So, good afternoon, and we'll get started. For over a century, the League of Women Voters has sought to make democracy work by holding events like this so voters like you can hear the views and observe the behavior of the candidates on a range of issues relevant to your community. This is why we ensure that all candidates agree to debate procedures. Further, by being here today, you're also agreeing to abide by the procedures that are posted there. But since I don't want to strain your eyesight, I'm going to read them to you. Here they are. The moderator will be a member of the League of Women Voters from outside of the district, and as Regina said, I live in Port Washington. I don't vote in Roslyn or any place except Port Washington. Candidates' opening statements were determined by drawing lots, and Mr. Teichman will be going first, followed by Mr. Peters. Each candidate will be allowed 3 minutes for an opening statement. And after each candidate has spoken, I will open the meeting to questions. Questions will be asked at the microphone, and you are advised that you will have 1 minute to ask your question. So best to start with the question rather than the statement. In all cases, I'm the arbiter of whether questions should be answered. So questions must not be duplicative, personal, or abusive. You'll be limited to 1 minute, and at 30 seconds, you'll be given a signal by my friend Nancy Kaplan here. And I'll stop you at 1 minute, so be ready. If I have to stop you, you'll have to sit down. That's bad. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds, a minute and a half to answer each question. At my discretion, I can reduce the time so long as I do the same thing for both candidates. There will be no rebuttal. Questions may be addressed to a specific candidate or to both candidates here. Each candidate would be given an opportunity to answer a question, even if it's addressed only to one candidate. I will attempt to rotate the order in which candidates respond to their questions, but if I lose my train of thought, please speak up, okay? Nancy Kaplan will serve as our timekeeper on any of the time periods that we're discussing here. Nancy will give a 30-second warning by raising her sign. And candidates who ignore the time signals may have their speaking time reduced, or those not violating the time rules might be given extra time. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for a closing statement. Now, the purpose of the meeting is to determine the candidate's view. There's no substitute for physical presence of the candidate, so you will not have a recorded statement. There'll be no props, no charts, no visuals, no campaign collateral, no t-shirts, apparel, no. In accordance with league policy, audio or video recording by authorized members of the media will be permitted only if the candidates present agree, and I don't think we have media here, do we?
No, newspapers that I know of, no.
Okay. The league maintains the right to record the forum and publish it on league-controlled electronic pages. No other recording is permitted. No partial transcript or recording may be published without written permission from the league. Now, both candidates have agreed to comply with these procedures, and as I said earlier, by being here, you're also agreeing to be bound by them. Like you, we're here today because we believe citizenship requires both knowledge and civic engagement. We also think that the responsibility of maintaining good government rests on the shoulders of the citizens, the people who are here today. So with that, we have some additional expectations of you. Please be sure your cell phones or electronic devices are silenced or turned off. The purpose is to hear from the candidates, so let's focus on their voices, not yours. Please remain seated and silent during the question and answer period. I will stop the debate if the audience interrupts. Interruptions reduce the time for candidates to speak, and that's contrary to our purpose here today. Again, league policy permits only authorized recordings of these forums, so no clips, no segments, and as was stated earlier, the league is recording the forum and will post it on the League of Women Voters of Port Washington-Manhasset YouTube channel. Hopefully tonight, if the technological gods are benign. And with that, I thank you for being here and interested in learning more about your candidates. So now, as we're going to start with opening statements, Mr. Teichman will go first. I'll ask you to hold your applause until after Mr. Teichman has spoken. And after that, after each candidate has given his opening statements, we're not going to have any applause until we get to the closing. So, thank you all, and Mr. Teichman, you're up.
Good afternoon, and thank you everybody for coming. I want to extend a special thanks to the Women League of Voters. What an amazing organization you have, and all the amazing things you have done for this country, so thank you. I also want to thank you, Paul, for coming here so we can share our visions for crossing states. And finally, I want to thank the Village of East Hills for hosting this event, and what an amazing thing you've built here. In fact, when I started looking into Roslyn, I was looking at East Hills as a place to move into. And then my broker took me to see a house in Roslyn Estates. And even though I didn't love the house, I fell in love with the community. The winding streets, the rolling hills, the trees, the houses, the landscaping, the pond. I loved it. In fact, I didn't look anywhere else after that point. And it reminded me of where I grew up. I remember throwing the football in the street, playing baseball in the backyard, riding bikes till the sun went down, and coming home and my mom yelling at me because I was in the middle of the street. In fact, back then, everybody was looking out for everybody when we lived in the community. They were watching out, and I really want that back. And I think we can do that. And I've seen glimpses of it in our own community. I remember a few months ago, my son was playing with a bunch of neighborhood kids on the street football. It brought so much joy to me. I remember the Civic Association putting on the Halloween party and seeing neighbors talk to neighbors who they probably would have never spoken to. These are things I think are very important, and I think we need to bring back. There isn't a real sense of community, and we need to bring that back. I think part of that starts with people having a connection with Village Hall. Right now, most people I speak with, they feel that Village Hall is a place they have to fight to get their permits approved. I think it can be much more than that. I think it can be a repository for ideas. People can come there and share their ideas to help improve the village, and also people can go to the village and learn about how to improve their houses and what materials they can use. They can also learn about, connect with new people at the Village Hall. I love Roslyn Estates. I think it's a great place to live. I think there's room for improvement. Vote for me, and every day I will work very hard for this village, and I will be your advocate. Thank you.
And please, Mr. Peters, your opening statement.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Thank you very much for coming to this debate, which I requested, and thank you to the League of Women Voters and to Mayor Koblenz in the Village of East Hills. I'm Paul Peters. Before my election as mayor, I served as both a trustee and as a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals. And when I lived in Muncie Park, I was president of their civic association. For the past 6 years in that role as mayor, my first priority has always been the best interest of Roslyn Estates, and I've worked hard to maintain the integrity of our village while making it even more beautiful and having it run more efficiently. Our trustees and individual boards are charged with representing all residents equally, not each one individually. Unfortunately, that occasionally puts us at odds with someone trying to ignore or overturn those rules to get something they want. But no one gets everything they want. We all make sacrifices. When Claire and I bought our dream farmhouse on the lot, we had to limit the size of our addition and forego a swimming pool. We preserved the landscape and kept the addition within zoning restrictions while addressing all concerns expressed by the ARB and building inspector. We felt it was our responsibility to adapt to our new community rather than expecting the village to adapt to us. Incorporated villages like ours were formed with the precise intention of controlling zoning, development, architecture, boundaries, and landscapes to benefit all residents. And like the others, we have a strict code to protect us from uncontrolled development, architectural eyesores, and the ravaging of our characteristic landscape, to keep property values high and preserve the unique environment that makes Roslyn Estates so desirable and valuable. Some, like Muncie Parks, are even more restrictive. Dismantling our code would destroy our village as assuredly as would the passage of Governor Hochul's high-density housing plan, and I'm proudly opposed to both attempts. To that end, I maintain good relationships with the mayors of our surrounding villages, along with the town supervisor and our New York State representatives. Our team has spent the last 6 years making our village among the safest, best managed, and most financially responsible, and most beautiful in the county. We have a close relationship with the police, who assure us we have one of the lowest crime rates in Nassau. We've held our tax rate for the last 3 years while undertaking several important capital projects, and we have more in the works. Throughout my tenure, I've always maintained a hands-on approach, giving full access to all residents and their issues, and providing all residents with my email address and private cell phone number. I issue regular newsletters and respond personally to each concern, suggestion, and inquiry, and I encourage attendance at our monthly trustees meetings. If you re-elect me, I'll continue to use my years of experience in business and village government to protect and improve our lifestyle at Roslyn Estates, and I'll continue to fight against it being downgraded into an ordinary, anonymous suburb filled with McMansions and high-density zoning. As always, I ask for your participation and support. Thank you.
open this forum to questions from the audience, and please come to the microphone. Remember that there is a time limit, it's 1 minute. So ask your question first, and then if there's remaining time and you have a comment.
No, Mike.
No,
That's
Okay,
So you understand.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Just be sure that you can finish within a
And move
minute.
it down, Regina,
So,
so it faces her face.
Okay, I'm Rita Sargent, I'm the one.
So wait a second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what is your plan to preserve and protect the magnificent 200-year-old oak trees and other heritage trees that give Roslyn Estates its beauty, privacy, and uniqueness? Will you support and enforce the newly developed tree code? My question is to both of you.
Mr. Teichman, we're gonna stick with these established orders, so you go first, please.
That's a very good question. And trees are something that are near and dear to my heart. I love the trees, I mentioned that earlier. Now, you ask, am I gonna support the current tree code? I think there are lots of challenges, and many people know that I've expressed lots of challenges with the tree code. It's not such an easy question, but if you ask me, do I wanna protect the big trees? I do. But currently, there are plenty of big trees that are being removed for various reasons, and we haven't been able to stop that. So I think we need to make a code that actually works and that people can use and understand, so that trees aren't removed without permission, and that trees, when people have good reasons to remove them, can be removed. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Peters?
The answer is yes. I do support the current tree code because Steve Fox, mainly, and our trustees, we rewrote it intentionally to make it more organized, more even-handed, and simpler to apply without debate at every meeting of the ARB. Residents are allowed to take down trees, certainly if they're in danger, or if they're in the way of a particular improvement, but there are consequences. If you want to remove a tree, you need to plant others. All of that is spelled out quite clearly and simply in the tree code, and so the answer is yes, I will support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. May I go? Okay.
I just wanna make sure that.
At present, our village hall is already open and welcoming. I remember when I first came to Roslyn Estates, I was terrified to go to the village because we did want to make some improvements, and I was so nervous to go, and I was so pleasantly surprised by how gracious everyone was, and so that's my feeling about it. If you feel the need, if either of you feel the need to improve the village hall in terms of their openness and welcome, what would you do differently?
No. Alternate.
Oh, you're right, June. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't make this clear. You got the first question first. You get the second question first. So sorry.
Except for the time during the pandemic when we had to restrict access to Village Hall and make sure that people were wearing masks and make other precautions based on the county and state requirements. Our Village Hall is always open, and as Claire said, very welcoming. I've always been welcome. I was always welcome there before I took office, and we make sure that everyone is treated appropriately and carefully by the staff. We have an amazing staff. They work hard all day and very often off hours to make sure the village is safe, protected, clean, easy to traverse, and that all residents' questions are answered. Sometimes there will be difficulties if a question can't be answered by the staff, if it's a matter for the police, for example, and we can't address it. But if it's within our power, we do. And so I wouldn't make any changes.
I actually have been to the Village Hall many times, and I've had very good experiences with both Sandy and Mike. And I don't think the people aren't welcoming. I think they're very welcoming. I think they've done a very good job with that. When I mentioned welcoming, I meant because most people in our village have no interest in going to Village Hall, because the only time they go is when they're dealing with permits or tickets or citations. I want it to be something where they can go there and get more than just that, where they can learn about upcoming events, where they can actually talk to the people about what are the appropriate building materials, what are things like this. So I want Village Hall to be more than just a place for permits. I want it to be a place where people can go and learn about their neighbors and the history of Roslyn Estates. We have historians who live in our neighborhood who can help us with that. So I think there are a lot of things that Village Hall can do additionally to what it's doing. Thank you. Oh, can I add one more thing?
Okay. But
One final.
you get a postscript if you want one later.
One final thing is, I would like to create a inventory of complaints, citations that is documented within the Village Hall and any actions taken, so people can see what has actually been done or being done for them.
No, that would be a rebuttal. I was saying on another
I
question.
just said a postcard.
On another question, sorry.
Good afternoon. I have a question, I guess, for Mayor Peters, is that I know now all the cameras are bought and implemented, and also unbeknownst to me, they were also going to be on part of the roadways to the pond. I was just curious that when you said you had certain goals, and you can comment, even though you weren't a participant, how you view that as we look forward, if we continue them, if they're cost effective, the kinds of taxpayer dollars that will have to continue them. So if you don't mind just responding to that.
Sure.
Part. And if you have any, response to the cameras that are now.
The camera system
States.
was installed after a very long debate and investigation as to which would be the best system. And then the board, based on the input from village residents, many of whom had requested it, voted to approve it, and it was installed. The cost is a sunk cost. It can't be recouped. The annual cost to maintain it and support it is part of the budget. That would be ended, I think it's about $20,000 a year, that'd be ended if we stopped using it. They're surveillance cameras. They don't really prevent anything. They may intimidate possible intruders, but they allow the police to possibly track someone who may have or may not have committed a crime. And the two cameras we put at the ponds were for a slightly different purpose. We had issues with people coming to the pond from out of the village and vandalizing the pond and trying to steal the koi that, for example, swim freely in black ink. So it was just for that. They're not viewed regularly, only in case where there's an incident or we need to check on it and the police request it.
I actually, from everything I've heard about the cameras, they're doing what everybody wants. They're actually, I believe, and Paul probably could comment on it, I believe there was a crime that was committed at the Real, and the cameras helped solve that crime. So I do think the cameras are a benefit to the community.
When I first moved to Roslyn Estates, I was very attracted to Christopher Morley Park. It's a short walk from my home, and the first summer we were really able to enjoy the park and its fields and swings, well, they don't have swings, but playgrounds and all the amenities that it offered. The next summer, I noticed that the entrance to the park was closed off. It was locked up, then afterwards they added trees on top of that to prevent people from going. I had young kids and I had a babysitter. Because the park was closed off, my kids were not able to go inside with a stroller. The only way you could go over the fence was obviously to hop it. What are your plans about reopening that entrance to the park?
Thank you for that question. I want to reopen that park. That is a top priority for me. I'm going to start calling Christopher Morley Park. I'm going to start calling the town of North Hempstead, Nassau County, and I'm going to keep calling and hounding until I get that park back open. That is a major goal of mine, and I'm going to fight for it every day.
Christopher Morley Park is county property. The park property, the county property starts at the curb of Diana's Trail and goes inward. The gate was closed by the county, not by the village, but by the county at their insistence. We tried at the time, before I was mayor, the board tried to get the county to reopen it. They would not do it. They still will not do it. They want to control access to the park. Even if we were permitted to open it, the consequences would not be just that the people who lived along Diana's Trail close to that gate would have access to the park from the side. People in the park, teenagers, whatever, at all times, would have easier access to the village. People from outside the village would drive along Diana's Trail and park there and use that as another entrance. The county doesn't want that. They want the access controlled. And even if we were to open that, some kind of gate, if the county were to allow it, it would benefit only those people who really just live right by the fence there, not the entire village. And once again, we have to deal with what's best for the entire village. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Bob Sargent. I live at 74 The Oaks, and I've been the village historian for about 12 years in Roslyn Estates, so that's approximately 6 years before Mayor Peters has been mayor. I have a degree from Parsons, a master's degree in architectural history, and I was a specialist in suburban history and design. One reason I came, let me read my question. Many of us want to live in Roslyn Estates because of its unique original design. Roslyn Estates is a planned community designed in 1907. Recently, the village's diverse architecture and 100-year-old trees have been threatened. The landscape we all share is potentially at risk. What will you do to help preserve what is so special about Roslyn Estates? Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Peters, you were first. Thank you.
It's a part of my ongoing role as mayor of the village and representing the entire village and all the people in it to preserve that heritage of our village. It is more than 100 years old. It was a planned community. Some of those original homes are still there. Our home is over 100 years old itself. We do that by having a code, a village code, as every incorporated village does. And that's why you live in an incorporated village. So what we can and cannot do is governed by those rules for the benefit of the entire village. It maintains the architectural integrity, not necessarily consistency, but integrity. The way that the landscape is, what impact we might have on our neighbors by building something or doing something. And it allows us to have that control to maintain property values. So to the extent that we can, we're gonna, if it's up to me, we will continue to maintain that heritage and the integrity of the original plan of Roslyn Estates as much as possible, and to minimize overdevelopment and crowding. Thank you.
I too would love to keep all the beautiful houses in the neighborhood. As I mentioned, there's some amazing houses, and I know the history. I actually speak with Jordan a lot, who's a historian as well. There are major challenges with keeping these houses because there's nothing really within our codes that protects any of these houses. So we need to come up with a solution, and I'm willing to work with people to come up with a solution that would incentivize people to keep these older houses. Because when newer people come in, the younger populations, they don't like most of these style houses. They want bigger open spaces. They want new and fresh. So if we want to realistically keep them, then we have to come up with a way that would incentivize them to keep them. Because the reality is, if we protect them, they're gonna decrease the value because less people will be interested. So we have to come up with a way to incentivize if we want to keep these houses. And that's why there are smarter people than me, and there's a lot more people than me that can help me come up with this type of idea. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Gillen, there also live there at Roslyn Estates. This is a safety type question. Not even gonna ask, but you can still feel free to answer about why so many people run stop signs, especially while you're walking, because that's a constant threat. But my safety question is to you guys is sometimes when these homes are being remodeled or whatever, a lot of construction trucks are along the way, and they're not really a nuisance, other than the fact that when two homes close by are being worked on, or they bring in a lot of trucks, that there's a safety factor involved, that the street becomes narrower, it's a one-way street, and there's dog walkers in the way, and sometimes there's a standoff with these vehicles. What do you propose to making it safer in the future? Thank you.
Mr. Teichman, you have this first.
That's a very good question, and honestly, something I haven't put any thought into yet. So, that would be something I would have to explore. I do understand your concern. I've seen it when I'm driving. It gets very narrow and very tight, and it does seem to be dangerous. And once again, it's something that I would definitely address and look to other people to help me figure out a solution to that.
That problem is something we address on a regular basis. Our roads are, by nature, narrow and winding. One of the reasons we probably have such a low crime rate, because I think there are still people in the village who still can't find their way out. But because of that, we have to be careful with things about parking, and including not only construction vehicles, but residents when they have guests and extra cars, more than they can fit in their driveway or their garage. And we do our best to manage that. Our building inspector is on 3 days a week, and our village clerk treasurer is on 5 days a week and comes around on weekends, and I also drive around regularly. When we see something that's a danger, we report it, and we speak to the contractors and ask them to move their vehicles if they're making it impossible to get by. But because our roads are just 2 lanes wide, there are always going to be times when we need to go around another vehicle, or they can only go one way. As far as the stop signs go, too many people are driving through our village and not obeying the stop signs, but most of them are people running through the village trying to avoid intersections and the main roads. And we continue to push the police to have a greater presence there. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes when they have other priorities, we're not. But we continue to push for that. And we did lower the speed limit. Thank you.
Regarding more community spaces, I recall that the current BOT has already researched at the request of residences all 3 possible locations in the village, Azalea Park, Fenway Preserve, and the Tennis Club, and concluded that none were either feasible or conveniently located, or that the cost-benefit ratio to create proper park recreation space was prohibitive, unfortunately. If either of you were to promise having more community spaces, where would you put them?
Mr. Teichman, yes, your.
So, it will take some time and it will take some research, but I think our biggest opportunity for community space is the location of the Tennis King. I think that is land that is being utilized for a very low sum of rent, and most residents do not actually use that. I think there is a potential there to build something greater. Just as this park that we're in right now in East Hills was poo-pooed by almost everybody around, it took a visionary to build something great that really increased the value. And I think if we think larger and better, we may be able to come up with something great in the Tennis King. And we now have 5 years to think about that because they have a 5-year lease.
There are less than 5 years left on the lease. The lease was renegotiated a few years ago to our advantage, including an increased rent and capital contributions for improvements and more speed humps to reduce the traffic. Right now, we're in the middle of negotiating. We're not in the middle. They're negotiating to try to buy the Korean school on the other side of the tennis club to allow access from that side and to improve their property and make it a bigger club, which would cut off the approach from within the village. As far as making that into something else, we did investigate that quite extensively. We had proposals for putting a park there. The problem was The topography is very difficult because of the steep hill to get there. It's located in a place where very few people are convenient to, it's convenient to very few people. It's one end of the village, through a parking lot, through another parking lot. And we do get a decent amount of rent there. It is an amenity to the village. And we tried hard to find a possible alternative use for the space, but there was none, and it cost to do something without a real benefit was really prohibitive. But we did quite an investigation, and we have all that on file.
Oh, okay, we have one more.
Great seeing so many people here at the meeting. Unlike village meetings that we have on Mondays, and it's great. Some familiar faces, some new faces. So thank you for attending. One of the things that I've been a resident for 53 years, and served on boards, trustees, et cetera, and everything else, and value the abilities of individuals to participate in Village of Roslyn Estates concerns, problems, etc. What is the most single problem that we have in Roslyn Estates, in your opinion, and how would you solve that?
The most what problems,
Uh, So it's Mr.
Largest
Parks.
problem.
You're up first. Sorry.
Right now, I think without question, the biggest problem and threat to our community is Governor Hochul's plan for high-density housing in our communities. That plan would basically override our zoning, end our home rule, and make it so that we no longer had any control over our environment. It would eliminate any requirement for environmental impact studies, and it would allow high-density zoning next to single-family homes. It would change the character of every village on Long Island, and I think that's the biggest threat we have now. The way we can fight it is what we're doing now. Mayor Koblenz, me, the mayor of every village on Long Island is fighting it, along with State Senator Jack Martins, Assemblywoman Saletti, every town supervisor. We've had several meetings to organize this fight, and to some degree, I believe we've already been successful. The Assembly has, there's a counter proposal for the budget presented to the governor that would eliminate all of those requirements, but address the problem of new housing with incentives. That would certainly be to our benefit. That's the biggest threat, and we have to fight against it because it's the biggest threat to not only our village, but our way of life.
I concur with Mayor Paul. I do think that that is the single largest, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the largest threat to our community. I want to maintain the aesthetics of Roslyn Estates. I want to maintain single-family homes, and with Governor Hochul's proposal, that would not be possible. So I concur, and I agree with the things that they've been doing, the letter campaign, the meetings between all the mayors. I think they've done a very good job with that.
Is it fair to say that everyone has asked the question? Oh, we have one more, okay.
Yes.
And then
Go
we'll
ahead.
to you, and then you'll be last.
Okay.
How's that?
This is for the challenger. I was wondering what civic involvement or management experience you have.
Thank you for that question. Actually, throughout my life, I've been involved in civics. From high school on, I was in student government in high school, student government in college. I was in community service organizations in high roles like Key Club, Kiwanis. I've continued to volunteer in food pantries, Meals on Wheels, all disadvantaged children's homes. All along the time I was coaching Little League and being associate commissioner of Little League, coaching soccer, as well as I was a member of the Community Education Council, or they were called the School Board 28 when I lived in Queens. While I was there, I was instrumental in turning one of the most dysfunctional school boards into one of the examples for the whole community, the whole city. In fact, all the other school boards were calling us up after about a year and asking what we had done to make the changes. So I have been involved in government for almost all my life, and I understand that what the most important thing of government is to actually listen to your citizens and find out what they want and do what's best for them. Thank you.
Well, actually, hang on for just a moment. Mr. Peters, since you do have the opportunity to answer the same
Thank you very
question
much.
if you'd like it.
I gave my experience in village government in Roslyn Estates and my experience in Muncie Park when we lived there. My background is in management. I have a BA in applied science and a BS in mechanical engineering from Lehigh University and an MBA from Wharton in finance. I was in the real estate and construction business for most of my life, my adult life. And then when we took the company public and I left there, I started a career, 28 years of teaching math and physics at Manhasset High School. I'm still involved, community service at Adventures in Learning in Great Neck and Manhasset. And Claire and I volunteer there, and I still tutor at-risk students there. As far as civics goes, since the subject was brought up, we have the oldest still existing civic association in Nassau County, Association of Roslyn Estates. It's something we need to restart, and I'm looking forward to that opportunity. We've had great success with it before, and I'm hoping to start something more enthusiastic, generate more enthusiasm with that again. Thank you.
Thank you. And this will be our final question.
I've read claims that residents have had to endure 10 or 12 meetings in order to get desired results from board approvals. Is that even true? If so, can either of you mention any specific cases where 12 or 10 such meetings were required, or are such claims merely exaggerated rumors spread on social media?
That's for you.
Personally, I'm not aware of anyone taking 10 or 12 meetings to get to something approved. Residents who have a project or looking to remove trees, if they're complying with the code, it happens like that. They get to their meeting, the approvals are done. What takes time is if someone is looking to do something outside the code. For example, a variance, and they come to the Board of Zoning Appeals. They may present a variance that is rejected. They may come back with another variance, a slightly smaller one or a different one. That might not be accepted. It's only when people are asking to do something outside our code where the reviews are repetitive. People who are doing something within the code have their requests approved very quickly. I'm not aware of, like I said, I'm not aware of anyone who's taken that many meetings. What we have done recently is we've improved the process so that the ARB gets involved from the very beginning, as does the village arborist, so that there's no backpedaling after certain approvals are given. The process starts from the beginning with everyone involved to try to streamline the process. It's actually been fairly effective so far. Thank you.
By the way, has anybody told you you have a striking resemblance to Volodymyr Zelensky?
That's him.
I have not actually worked in Village Hall, so I can't confirm or deny anything. I have heard from a friend on ARB of at least one example of someone taking more than 6 meetings to get approval with the ARB. I myself, for my trees, took over 3 meetings to get approval for my trees. So I have a different feeling and a different experience on that, in that with the ARB, for example, there are not clear and concise codes. In fact, one of the codes, and I'm going to misquote this, but it says something along the lines of a house cannot be too similar or too dissimilar or generally unappealing to the house next to it. I'm probably misquoting it slightly, but it is unclear guidance, and it makes it very difficult for the ARB to make decisions, and I want to improve that and give some guidance to the ARB and give some guidance to the residents. So they can go to the meetings and have faith that they will get approved if they are within the guidelines. Thank you.
You know, I owe you one PS if you want it. Did you have anything that you wanted to say? I had given Mr. Teichman the opportunity to add something to an answer. So if you have anything you wanted to add to any of your answers at this point, you're welcome to.
I would just reiterate that, like I said, the reasons a resident might come back multiple times is because they're continuing to change their application. If their application is within the code, it gets approved right away. When Claire and I did our farmhouse, we did everything as of right, so we were approved right away. We didn't have to go before the BZA. But as far as the ARB was concerned, we actually kind of appreciated the input in terms of materials and even the size of a window, which I thought was a great suggestion. And they couldn't have been more cooperative and helpful. So I believe, my understanding is that sometimes the experience of the resident has to do with sometimes with the approach that's being made and the application that's being made. Like I said, Claire and I thought it was best for us to adapt to the village rather than to try to get the village to adapt to us.
Well, thank you both, Mr. Peters and Mr. Teichman. I'd like to remind the audience that holding elective office is a public service, and running for office takes courage, as does participating in candidate forums like this. Both of these candidates clearly care about their community and about you, and you also care about your community just by being here, and I applaud you for that. So let's applaud the candidates. Oh, we have to do closing statements. That's right. I forgot all about that. No, yes, we did. I forgot. Mr. Teichman, please, your closing statement. And then I'm going to repeat what I just said.
Once again, thank you everybody for coming here and having me and giving me the opportunity to share my views with all of you. I was raised with the values of service, and I've spent my whole life working to achieve those goals. Now I have an opportunity to do more and to help Roslyn Estates become even better. I'm not perfect, and I'll probably make some mistakes. But I will never stop trying to improve Roslyn Estates. If you give me the honor of becoming your mayor, I'm going to work my tail off to make sure that every voice is heard in the community. I'm going to work my tail off to make sure that the community functions, that there are community functions which bring neighbors together. I'm going to work my tail off to make sure that the village hall works for the residents and is not an obstacle to improvement. I'm going to work my tail off to make sure that we can meet the demands of the new people coming in without sacrificing what makes this community unique and beautiful. If you give me the honor of becoming mayor, I will always be there for you and for the village of Roslyn Estates. Thank you for your time.
Please.
Thank you. Today our village is being attacked from without and within. The governor wants to impose on us high-density zoning and remove our home rule. Some in the village want to allow uncontrolled development and deforestation. Both voices want to either strip or override our zoning rules and building codes. The choice is clear. We can protect and improve the beauty, lifestyle, and structure of idyllic Roslyn Estates, or let it be transformed into a no-holds-barred, treeless, crowded suburb with no sense of community or concern for our neighbors. We can stick with my record of experience, dedication, and significant accomplishments to protect our village, its heritage and beauty, our way of life, and our property values. Or we can switch to someone with no experience and or knowledge of village government, who's running because the ARB denied him permission to take down several healthy trees in his yard and to try to strip the code so he can do whatever he wants, regardless of the impact on the rest of us. Please help me protect our beautiful village. Thank you.
Now, as I said before, clearly everyone in this room cares about your community, and I applaud you for that. Let's applaud both of the candidates. I'd like to thank you, the audience, for being asking important questions. You've demonstrated civic concern, and that is fundamental to democracy. Candidates, let's applaud your audience for their contributions. With that, I thank you all and declare the forum closed.